Pin asked, placing his hand on a module next to the door. Without waiting for an answer, he swung the door open a second later. In front of them stood 4 rows of 2 insectoids each. They were 4 feet tall and had thin limbs, each carrying a long rifle in proportion to their height. Gabriel couldn't understand what they were saying, as strangely enough their language wasn't covered by his translator. He was trying to figure out what to do when the insects suddenly opened fire on him. The tiny projectiles they shot bounced off his armor, but one managed to dig into his elbow where the armor had joints. Pin and Chip fired back from around the corner of the door. And a few deafening seconds later, all the pirates were lying motionless on the floor.
"Great meat shield, dummy!"
Chip punched him in the shoulder.
"Now go and take the ship. I'll hold the door."
Gabriel had never witnessed anyone dying in real life. He knew his elbow was supposed to hurt, but he felt nothing in his arm. In fact, he felt nothing at all. Not the bruises from the bullets hitting his armor, not the blood dripping through the steel plates. He didn't even feel remorse or guilt about participating in a mass murder. He didn't know what to feel anymore, so he started walking. He thought the sight of the lifeless bodies below him would trigger some emotions, but it didn't. He was numb, his mind empty. He kept walking until he started to feel something, but it wasn't sorrow or pain or even disgust. It was rage. Rage about being abducted and forced to fight for his life. The rage was building up inside him with every step, until every fiber of his body was consumed. When he turned a corner and saw a dozen pirates on their way to back up the first group, he unleashed the anger that had built up inside him. Unable to control himself anymore, he let out a roar and charged into the group. Caught off guard by what was running at them, they forgot to shoot at him until he was almost among their ranks. But it wouldn't have changed anything. When he reached them, he didn't know what to do. But he didn't care either, so he started punching, stomping, and ripping apart anything that moved. And it worked. Every time he hit an alien, his fist would go much deeper than imaginable, and their thin limbs would tear when he got a hold of them. Still consumed by frenzy, he continued even after the last insect stopped moving. He ran through the corridors of a ship he didn't know, jumping on anybody he encountered. He reached a closed door, and instead of calming down, he sped up, using his body weight to ram through the door. It worked, but not without a cost. He hit his head as he crashed into the door and felt dizzy as he stood back up, the door now lying on the floor beneath him. Gabriel looked around the room and noticed that it resembled a bridge, just like the one where he had spoken with Aina. In the center stood another insect, its shiny helmet indicating that it was the captain. The insect reached for its gun and fired at him. Gabriel advanced, bullets bouncing off him. Wrapping his fist around the captain's head, he crushed it, just as Tibi had shown him. The body slumped to the floor. Gabriel dropped the remains of the helmet and head, then turned around. The dizziness was getting worse. He could barely stand anymore, but unwilling to stop, he shook his head and started walking towards the door, when suddenly he felt the need to vomit. He ripped off his helmet and fell to his knees, retching uncontrollably. There was no food, just stomach acid, a bitter reminder of where he was, an alien ship. His elbow and all the places he had been shot at hurt. The dizziness returned, even stronger this time. His vision started to fade. He felt terrible and rolled onto his back before slipping into unconsciousness.
You really need to stop waking up in my office,
Tibby said, gently shaking Gabriel. He opened his eyes, and the first thing he saw was Tibby's face just inches away from his, waiting for a response. His elbow throbbed with pain, his body was covered in bruises, and his head was still aching. A loud groan was all he could offer as a reply while sitting up. But once he finally sat, he responded.
I'm really not trying to. What happened?
Well, first, you went on a rampage, killing 21 enemy combatants. Then you burst through a door and took out the enemy captain. After that, you collapsed on the enemy bridge, which was the furthest room from us, and we had to come and rescue you. You're lucky Chip was wearing her exosuit, otherwise carrying you would have been hell.
Tibby explained, sounding concerned.
Will I be okay?
Gabriel didn't feel too terrible, but he had no experience with getting shot, so he wanted to make sure. Tibby took a deep breath before responding.
The armor protected you from the worst, but one bullet hit between the plates. I have no idea how, but luckily it got stuck in your skin. Otherwise, you'd have major issues now. Long story short, you'll be as good as new in 1 or 2 weeks. One thing, though, please never, ever try to run through a door again.
Gabriel felt relieved, but right now he was mainly thinking about getting food.
Can I get something to eat?
You ended 21 lives and nearly died. How can you possibly be thinking about food right now?
Tibby asked, still staring at him.
I don't know, I'm hungry.
That was the honest truth.
The others are actually eating right now. Want to join them?
She was already helping him up and leading him to the door.
Yeah. Did anyone else get hurt?
Gabriel asked, though he barely cared right now. His hunger overshadowed all other emotions.
Pin did. He followed you when you lost control and had to hold the bridge after you passed out until we arrived. He got half your body count protecting you. If it wasn't for him, a pirate would have slit your throat. You better thank him later.
Tibby was dead serious, and he heard it. They reached a small dining room. It was nothing fancy, just a table in the center of a room. One of the walls was lined with a row of small windows, and another had a food dispenser, but that just summed it up. At the head of the table sat Aina, eating what looked like a roasted part of an animal. To her right was Pin, his arm wrapped in a bandage. With his other hand he ate a stew. On Aina's left was an empty seat, but next to that was Chip. Her plate was already empty. Gabriel sat down next to Pin. Tibby went to the food dispenser, pressed a few buttons on a monitor, and returned with 2 plates, handing one to Gabriel.
How do you feel, Gabriel?
Aina shifted the focus of the conversation towards him.
I'm not dead, but I still have a bomb inside me and am forced to serve you.
Gabriel replied. He didn't feel like being polite, as killing in the name of a navy he had no loyalty towards was not enjoyable.
Necessity,
Aina responded.
If you put a bomb inside me in the name of necessity, then why did you order Chip to add the parasites?
Gabriel was on the verge of screaming at her when Chip suddenly burst into laughter.
She didn't.
Chip's laughter filled the room. Unable to control her breathing through the laughter, she continued. Nobody else laughed. They all just watched while Chip tried to control herself. Finally, she looked around the table with an expression that clearly asked why nobody else laughed.
I was bored.
Aina sighed before speaking.
We will talk later, Chip. Gabriel, I'm sorry you have weaponized parasites inside you, but there is nothing that can be done now.
You could just take the bomb out,
Gabriel suggested, feeling calmer again. Chip's confession had disturbed him. Aina raised her lizardy eyebrow before replying.
I cannot guarantee your obedience without something to leverage against you, so just drop the topic, Trooper.
Gabriel was about to respond when Tibby interrupted.
So, Gabriel, are you ready to tell us who built you? There is no point in hiding it anymore after you went on a full rampage.
Tibby asked. The fact that Earth existed with a few billion people similar to him on it was Gabriel's last card, and he wasn't just going to play it. However, he wasn't going to lie about being modified either, so he dodged the question.
Maybe I'm just different. Do I really have to be modified in some wizard's lab?
Gabriel responded. Tibby instantly replied.
You weren't made in some wizard science lab, but someone way ahead of the Union's understanding engineered you. Before going on the mission, I was briefly interviewed for a position to help create cells in soldiers that could accept adrenaline once injected by a pump we implanted. And now I'm sitting at the same table with a being whose body can not only accept adrenaline, but also produce it with a mix of additional stimulants naturally. Tell me, why would any baseline mammal need a rampage button inside of it from an evolutionary standpoint? I am absolutely certain that these pirates raided some secret sanctuary of science and didn't know what you are.
Gabriel didn't know how to respond. Instead, he said nothing and took another bite of the bread noodle mix Tibby brought him. Tibby saw this as a sign to continue her argument.
Every known technique of modification reduces the brain power and motor function of the subject. Basically, the more powerful we make something, the more incompetent it gets. Either you are a god modified for war to end up like this, or there is a lab that developed a new way of manipulation. And if that...
Okay, we get it.
Chip interrupted.
You don't have to suck his dick so hard. We can still blow him up if things go wrong, so he's not that powerful. Are you?
She stood up and got in Gabriel's face.
I'm just trying to survive and eat.
Gabriel replied honestly. He was actually just hungry. He hadn't eaten since waking up.
I'm just glad you made it out,
Pin said, putting down his spoon and lightly boxing Gabriel with his healthy arm. Looking at the bandages made Gabriel feel guilty. Pin was hurt because he couldn't control himself.
Hey man, I'm really sorry about what happened.
Gabriel really meant it. He felt worse for risking Pin's life than killing all those pirates.
Don't apologize. You were following orders, and so was I.
Pin replied, grabbing his spoon again. Aina took this as her cue to speak.
Absolutely correct. You both were following my commands. Gabriel, how do you feel about another mission?
I'd rather do anything else besides feeling a bomb inside me explode, so why are you even asking?
Gabriel sarcastically responded.
Because I want to offer you a deal. Pin is obviously unable to accompany me on an excursion that I planned, and just the sight of you could scare off problems.
Aina explained, waiting for his answer.
A deal usually involves payment for both parties. So what's in it for me?
Gabriel was practically praying that it involved the removal of the bomb. But he knew Aina would never allow that.
You get the prisoner,
Aina explained, leaning back in her chair.
Prisoner?
Gabriel was caught off guard. He never considered that the pirates could also surrender.
There were 2 groups of passengers left after you passed out. One half was assaulting the bridge to avenge their brothers, and the other half were hostages the pirates took before reaching our ship, resulting in me being able to offer you a prisoner as compensation for your services. She's a hyena like Tibby.
Gabriel had to think for a second before responding.
There is so much wrong about what you just said. I am mad for being forced to serve you against my will, and you offer me a slave? And what happened to the rest? Did you sell them too for favors?
Aina was clearly surprised by his outrage and replied,
We are part of a navy, not slavers. The only reason we took prisoners in the first place was so you could have one as compensation for your trouble. But TB thought you wouldn't be able to choose, which you clearly can't, so I chose one for you. If you don't want her, just put her in the airlock. Pin will show you how to operate it.
This broke Gabriel's mental capabilities. How was he supposed to respond?
I accept your gift, thank you,
Gabriel said. He didn't want to own anyone, but he was afraid that Aina would kill the hostage if he refused.
It's good to know you are willing to cooperate. I had TB prepare your room. Killing machines are not our typical guests.
Aina seemed to be hinting for him to leave, and the nagging silence around the table confirmed it.
Can you show me the way, TB? I never got a tour of the ship after you bought me and forced me to fight.
Gabriel had mixed feelings about TB. On one hand, she followed Aina's horrible orders, but on the other hand, what choice did she have? He knew nothing about her, their mission, or the war he got stuck in.
Just follow me,
Tibby said. as she carried their plates to a compartment next to the dispenser. He stood and waited until she exited the room. All eyes were on him, waiting for him to leave. Tibby led him around the surprisingly small ship until they arrived at a door. She stopped in front of it and placed her hand on his chest before he could enter.
Gabriel, there is an injured Hyee in your room. She didn't tell me her name, but I know that she doesn't consider us her saviors. Did Aina ever tell you how we ended up where we are?
Gabriel replied.
She told me to fight or die.
Okay, it's time for a history lesson. I can't let you in there knowing less than her.
Gabriel got the sense that Tibby was about to talk for a while.
This whole mess started when the Helm Union found out that some planetary governors deployed a feudal-like system to maximize profits on their worlds, which was against Union law. A hearing was held to judge them, and it was decided that all their titles should be stripped, but they refused to comply. When the Union set an ultimatum, they rebelled and formed the Rutha Confederation. Initially, it seemed like a minor conflict that could be swiftly resolved by a small force, but we later learned that they were well aware of their violation of Union law and had planned an uprising. Many factions pledged allegiance to them when the rebellion began. The Union fleet could muster 13 fleets to combat the threat, while the Confederation had 11. Fortunately, some of their navy remained loyal, and there was a wave of desertions throughout their fleet. Union spies were aware of this, but no admiral would allow their fleet to switch sides until the first one did. Can you guess who that was?
I woke up on this ship 2 days ago. What do you want me to say?
Gabriel had no clue.
It was Aina. She was the first admiral to betray the Rutha Confederation. The list of reasons why she should be executed is endless, but the Union didn't want to scare off other admirals by killing her. So she was put in charge of a small corvette with her lifelong bodyguard, Pin. It paid off in the end when 3 other admirals defected and joined our side, effectively making the new balance of power 17 Union fleets against 7 Confederation fleets. This made the outcome of the war painfully obvious, but the Ruthas still refused to surrender. They have 2 major factions that continue to support them. The Salzeisen Brotherhood, which consists of several systems known for their industrial productivity, and the Galactic Trade Commission, which provides them with financial support and cannot be prosecuted by the Helm Union. Any questions?
Gabriel focused on trying to remember everything but had one question.
What is the mission of this ship?
Currently, there are 4 Union fleets besieging a planet called Rutha, where Rutha Ainauga is located. He named the planet and the Confederation after himself. The fleets are unable to break through because the Brotherhood has turned the planet into a massive fortress. The siege could last forever since the GTC has prohibited any trade restrictions against the planet. We are here to destroy one of the 2 gates through which supplies are delivered. Another strike team is en route to eliminate the other gate. Is there anything that is still confusing?
Why are you here?
Gabriel asked.
You look even less of a soldier than me.
Gabriel remembered how wrong the rifle looked in her hands.
I'll tell you another day. You need rest more than anything right now,
Tibby replied as she turned away and walked off. He watched Tibby for a moment before turning and walking into his room. His room wasn't big. The wall across the door had windows to the void and a bed. But the bed was different. It was a quarter circle put in the corner instead of the rectangle he was used to. The wall to his right was filled with cabinets, and the wall to his left had an improvised hammock. But none of that caught his interest. His undivided attention was on the tied-up and gagged Hyee on the floor. The ropes were so numerous that she couldn't even sit upright. He instantly got to work and ripped apart rope after rope until the Hyee was sitting in front of him, leaned against the bed frame.
Are you okay? Can I help you?
Gabriel had taken a first aid class as a teenager, but he doubted that would help him treat the alien.
What do you want from me?
Her voice was trembling.
My name is Gabriel. Are you injured?
He tried to build an emotional connection.
So you are the one whose gift I am? Why me? What do you want?
She was shaking. Gabriel knew that wasn't good.
Just calm down, okay? I woke up on this ship 2 days ago and they forced me to fight against the pirates. Aina, the captain, is trying to buy my loyalty with you, but I'm against slavery. We both just want to get off this ship and go back home.
He inched closer with every sentence, trying to calm her.
Do you know how I ended up here?
The question was rhetorical.
My planet was taken by the Ruthas, and they allowed pirates to just take whoever they wanted. I was taken. Then your ship showed up. Do you know how they chose me as your gift? They lined us up. Your captain had the doctor inspect us, and the unfitting ones were shot. We were trimmed down until 4 remained. I was certain to die right then and there. The hostage to my left held titles before the Rutha came, and the one on my right had a degree.
But you lived, and now you're safe. Please just relax.
Gabriel was not emotionally evolved enough to say anything else.
After that, a weird lady with a prosthetic arm tied me up and left me in here. The only thing I've been able to think about is why I was chosen. If wealth or knowledge didn't matter, what did? Am I the best one to torture? Do I taste the best? Is this a fetish thing and you want to rape me? Or do you want to harvest my organs for the other Hayi? So what is it? Why am I alive?
The Hayi was starting to melt down and cry. Gabriel had no answer.
I don't know why Aina chose you, but I want you to know that I won't hurt you, okay?
He was desperately hoping something would connect with her.
But what if you just say that to get my hopes up?
Her breathing was slowing down.
I am not. I can't prove it, but I can try. You seem very exhausted from the whole ordeal. How about you just go to bed and sleep? I'll take the hammock, and if neither of us kills the other one, we can start to trust each other.
Gabriel felt guilty. He should have put more effort into calming down the Hayi. But the rampage and getting shot drained him. Lying in the hammock made him think, what does Pin see in Aina? He saved his life and didn't commit atrocities, but Tibby told him that he was her lifelong bodyguard. That could be code for something she didn't want to explain to him. How many lies was he fed? He could trust nothing Aina told him. But what about Tibby or Chip? He knew nothing about Chip aside from the fact that she built the bomb inside him and added the parasites. That was the first and only act of insubordination he saw. Everybody else just did whatever Aina said. Even Tibby, she was nice to him but helped select which hostages needed to die. His mind jumped from question to question until he finally fell asleep.